Hi, good morning, and welcome to the webinar today, Portfolio Analysis with Deltek Acumen Fuse software. I'm Tom Polen. Along with me today, I have Justin Sommer from our Solutions Architecture organization here at Deltek. Just a couple of notes before we get started today. Justin and I will be giving the presentation, but we also want to give you the opportunity to ask questions along the way. Jen Weber in our marketing organization is actually going to be monitoring the chat window in the GoToWebinar control panel. So although we'll be giving the presentation, you can actually ask questions and potentially get them answered as we're talking. Towards the end of the session, Jen will ask Justin and I some questions based on the questions that you've been asking during the session. If we don't answer your question during the session, we'll be able to get back to you soon after the webinar. So the way we're going to structure things today is Justin's going to talk to us about Deltek and the Acumen software, and then I'm going to come in a little while, and we're going to use the tool and talk about how we can take many of the standard functions of the Deltek Acumen software and apply them in the portfolio analysis situation. So Justin, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I thought before we go straight into the portfolio analysis demo, we could talk a little bit about who we are, what we are passionate about, and just a high-level overview of what Tom is going to be talking about in a few minutes. So who we are is we're a solutions provider for project-based businesses. We help organizations, both large and small, win, manage, deliver, and measure their projects through the entire project lifecycle. Today, Tom and I are going to be focusing on the managing and measuring piece of our portfolio through the Acumen solution suite. So what Tom and I are passionate about is the schedule and risk, and how risk ties into the bigger picture. We strongly believe and are advocates that a strong schedule is key. Understanding the strengths, the weaknesses, or shortcomings before it is too late is critical to delivering on time. We cannot also effectively manage our portfolio without also understanding the risk we may encounter. Being able to see the impacts of the risk on our schedule and where to focus our time and effort to mitigate those risks could save valuable time during the project execution. So how do we approach schedule and risk analysis? We look at it in what's called a S1 to S5 maturity framework. So I'm just going to take you down the framework and introduce you to some of the different modules of our Acumen solution suite. And then we'll get into the demo, and Tom can show you in the application how we can utilize these tools for portfolio analysis, not just single project analysis. The S1 stage is the schedule basics, if you will. It's you've developed your schedule, created the logic. You could also have costs, so maybe you run your costs through our Deltek Cobra tool. You can have, maybe let's say you have a risk register, whether it's in Excel or some other tool that's outside of the Acumen suite. These are basically the different inputs that you're going to provide to the application. And so really where we come into play is this S2 and beyond stages, if you will. The S2 stage is you're bringing in that schedule and those different inputs and data and information, and we're going through some project diagnostics. I'll get into each one of these in a little more detail here in a little bit, but basically you're critiquing your schedule, you're understanding those strengths and weaknesses, and you're going back through and you're making those corrections. You're fixing the schedule, you're improving it, and basically we're aiming for, you'll see a lot of talking about like schedule scores. You're aiming for that best schedule score that you can have. Once you've gone through and done that critique, fixed any issues or potential issues in your schedule, then you can look at it in the risk modules. That's where you can import risk, or you can use the risk register that's within the tool to then provide risk for your both schedule and cost, and understand how that impacts your schedule. And so you can actually get some comparisons and get a little better confidence at where to focus your time and effort for those risks and how they may potentially delay your schedule. And then finally, the 360 module is the project optimization. So this is where you can run different scenarios, what ifs. Maybe your project slipped and you need to catch up. What would I have to do in order to get caught up? and then you can compare that to your current schedule and then have those conversations with the program manager or whoever else in the project. And then finally, of course, team approval and buy-off and validation. Now, this isn't just I go through it one time necessarily and I'm done. It's definitely an always ongoing process. Every month as you're statusing, or week as you're statusing your schedule, you can always bring it in and very critique, run it through, get a schedule score, understand risk, update your risks, and see what those impacts are on your schedule. So a little more detail into a few of these different tools that we're talking about. Again, the Acumen Fuse is our diagnostic piece. We're going to see a lot of that today. And what's key with Acumen Fuse and the portfolio concept, and not just a single project, is the ability to take maybe some common data attributes or codes or fields that are across your portfolio. Maybe you're responsible for a number of projects and you want to see how well how well you can diagnose based on a manager, maybe based on phase, location. You can cut and slice not only by project and WBS levels, but also by these different data attributes as well in the system. You can also customize. So we provide all kinds of schedule metrics right out of the box for you. We even provided like a little template for you where we picked what we thought were the best schedule metrics to help understand your real schedule quality, if you will. But you can also customize that, if you will. You can add new schedule metrics. You can play around with the different types of scheduling templates and scoring that you can do. You can also see trending over time and how well over different time phases you are addressing the different scheduling issues that you may have. Again, the risk piece, allowing you to bring in the risk register or populating the risk register that currently exists in the system. Understanding how the risk through Monte Carlo analysis impacts your schedule, and you can do comparisons to your current schedule as well. So here, it just improves that confidence so you can understand not only the risks that are, not only how much the risks affect your different activities, but what risks, kind of flipping around and seeing what risks are causing the most delay across the entire portfolio or individual projects as well. And again, finally, the 360. This is the what ifs, the hypothesis, or modeling out opportunities, threats, delays in your schedule. So this helps you to understand based on your current schedule, if maybe I need to pull in something, something slipped out, what do I need to do in order to pull that in? And you can run different scenarios, and we have a lot of built-in scenarios, and you can generate your own scenarios to help you do these different types of what-if analysis, if you will. So again, here, maybe I want to pull in my contract date on a particular piece of the contract or the contract as a whole. How do I pull that? How do I pull that in? What would I need to do? Once I understand through the tool what I need to do, I can then talk to program managers, schedulers, control account managers, whoever it may be in the project, and say, hey, can we do this? And what's the best route and method to be able to do this? And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Tom to let him take over.
Cool. Justin, thanks a lot. Thanks for taking us through the software suite. And I'm going to spend a few minutes now to talk about what I'm going to talk about today. And then also, as I go through, I'm going to emphasize some of the capabilities of the software. But we've done some recent webcasts, and we always have more coming up where we're going to walk through the basics of the software. We also have the collection of our past presentations and papers and videos regarding the software out on our website as well, and I'll show you how to get there at the end. Let me get to my place here. Justin, are you seeing my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Oh, here we go. So let's talk about some basics of what I mean and get on the same page when I'm talking about portfolios, and then we'll go into the software. I'll show you some of the basic functions of the software, but we're going to then take that slant towards the portfolio management piece as well. Now, everything I show you for portfolios can be done for individual projects, and everything we talk about with individual projects in the Acumen Suite we can also do with portfolios. So really, it's not special functions or features. It's one and the same. It happens to be particularly elegant and well executed, the way that I can evaluate and score a portfolio and then make improvements to the portfolio as well. As I say here, the suite is very comfortable with either individual projects or portfolios. There's no button or switch that takes you from one mode to the other. It's all the same software. It's all the same capability. The thing that I like and the thing that I've tested to an extreme extent is to assure that there's no fidelity of information lost when I'm analyzing a portfolio. To explain what that means is my background is scheduling. I like getting my hands on individual activities in the schedule, understanding where they fit into the network, and making sure that it's the highest quality approach possible so that my network works forward pass, backward pass, everything works the way that it's expected. Now, when I go into this mode, again, virtual mode, not an actual mode, but when I go into this mode of analyzing portfolios, it's very important to me that I don't lose any fidelity of information. I don't want to see rolled up information. I want to see the information that's going to help me fix my project or portfolio and have it perform optimally. So although we're going to be able to roll the information up, I just want to clarify that. I can certainly roll the information up, but when I need to see that lowest level of detail down to the individual activity or work package with its logic and its leads and lags and constraints and all those other things, I have that whether I'm analyzing an individual project or an entire portfolio. Many of you are familiar with our S2 diagnostics screen in our software. If you're not, you're going to see it in a few minutes, so don't worry. What we take advantage of, especially when we're analyzing portfolios, are those custom fields in your schedule that you've relied upon to identify different types of information. One field that I'll be using throughout my examples today is called location. It represents the location in which the work in my project is taking place. If I code location on every activity, on every project in my portfolio, now I can do portfolio analysis by location, which transcends the individual projects. So I can look, and you'll see this visually in a couple minutes. I'm just trying to paint a mental picture here. So if I have a location called California, and it's utilized in 76 of the 100 projects in my portfolio, I can organize my quality information by location, look at California's tasks, regardless of which of those 76 or 100 projects that those tasks are in. And I can look at California as an entity which I can use to evaluate quality on, just like I can with all my other locations as well. Again, I'm going to bring this to life in a couple minutes here. The setup, as we get closer to kind of getting into the software here, the setup is exactly the same as you would normally open a project in the Acumen environment. In fact, instead of opening one project, you open a series of projects. In fact, if you're using Primavera, OpenPlan, some of the more enterprise-friendly scheduling tools, you can open your whole portfolio at one time as a single project, so that you don't have to go through the repetitive opening individual projects. And that's all a matter of how you've created, if you've created an enterprise structure in your scheduling tool, the Acumen software is going to see that enterprise structure and either show you the projects individually, or as we show in this high-level example here, we've taken these 5 or 6 projects and consolidated them into a single line item. More on this screen in a couple minutes when we get into the software. So when we get into the software, we'll be starting with this S1 project screen. We'll be able to look at a Gantt chart that represents our portfolio at any level. It could be a Gantt chart by project, where we see one line item per project. We could expand out to the level 2 for all of our projects. Or what we can do is we can take that location field, and we can group our Gantt chart by location so that we can see the time phasing of, for each of the locations that are represented. So they know exactly when they would be starting work and finishing work without having to open 76 individual projects to figure that out. And what we'll do is we'll go over into the software. Let me just see. We're definitely going to score projects relative to one another. So I have about a 3-project portfolio. I kept it kind of small. We're going to do some grouping, and we'll show you this single ribbon mode. And of course, we'll talk about quality and these other items as well. So let me switch over to the software here. I've done a couple things in advance just for the sake of time, but I'll show you right now exactly what I did. This is the Deltek Acumen suite. If you recall earlier, Justin took us through the S1 to S5 maturity framework. That maturity framework is represented right here across the 3 elements of the suite that Justin talked about. In fact, there's more than 3 tabs. In fact, there's more than 5 tabs, because our S2 piece in particular spans 3 items within the software. And we'll be looking at each of these. Now, the exciting part about S1, which we're on now, is getting information into the system. Whether your portfolio is based around one scheduling tool or you use multiple scheduling tools within your organization, you can bring the projects in irrespective of scheduling tool, including a mix of scheduling tools, and line them up as I have here in a portfolio arrangement. So if you have some projects in MS Project, Primavera, OpenPlan, and even just have a few very simple high-level schedules in Excel, you're covered. You can line them up here, and all these portfolio functions that I'll be showing you today will work just fine. So that's number one, is getting information into the system. Now, I talked about this Gantt chart in particular. And on this screen, I'll give the Gantt side a little more real estate here. As I mentioned, we can expand out. I've given my projects very simple names at the high level, Project 1. And I can expand Project 1, Project 2, and same with Project number 3. So, okay, you know, just like in a scheduling tool, I can roll them up, I can expand them down. It is nice that I can have more than one project open here at a time, and they can be representative of a mix of scheduling tools. So if you use tool A, right now you can open up all your projects in that native tool, but then to see the rest of your portfolio in your other tool, you would have to open that tool. You wouldn't be able to see them all in one place. Here we can bring them from the different scheduling tools that you may be using all into one place. Now I realize some of you are using a single scheduling tool, and that's fine too. You would just line them up from your single scheduling tool. Now the next step is I can take and I can group, and this is where those fields come in. In fact, we just recently posted an article on our website which talks about the process behind determining what those fields should be for your portfolio and the best practices to take your existing portfolio and normalize them using that standard set of fields. This, you know, very quickly as a portfolio evolves organically, you can almost get that Tower of Babel effect where each project team has gone off and created different codes for their different projects. Now, normally you don't want that, especially if you're going to be doing portfolio analysis. The reality is we all have that in one form or another. So the motivation to normalize and drive each project to a common set of fields or even a common subset of fields, the motivation is what I'm showing you today. The power of the information that we can get out of that time investment of arranging the fields so they're exactly the same way in different projects. In fact, if you get it close, as we talk about in that article, we have a field mapping utility where if one project calls the location field location and the other one calls it place or LOC period or something like that, we can use our fields function in the software to get those all lined up so that different field names that are talking about the same thing actually get organized with respect to one another. Anyway, what I have here across my 3 projects is I do have a field in each one of them called location. So I can take my portfolio, and now, and again, this could be 3 projects or this could be 103 projects. Now what I can do is I can see my work that I have taking place in each location, irrespective of project. So if I'm a location or site manager, this view might have considerable interest for me, so I can see what work is going on in what time frames in my location. This can be sorted in any number of ways. I just have it right now sorted in the order the tasks appear in the schedule, but we can have a complete waterfall view, and between the activity view and our new Smart Gantt feature, I can even change the color of the bars, the appearance of the bars based on which date types, and the color with respect to quality, historical performance, or any of those 300 some metrics that Justin referred to earlier. And we'll be showing you what we mean by those metrics as well. So in terms of configuring this screen so that a site manager or a program manager who works on multiple projects, they can use a view like this to see all of their work across project, across scheduling tools, all in one place. Now this is just the beginning, because we're not even really doing any analytics here. We're doing some basic analytics of just seeing where in time and space our work is occurring. So let's take the next step, the next leap here, to the diagnostic screen. This is really where the fun begins in the Deltek Acumen Fuse environment. Now, I will take a couple minutes on this screen. For some of you, I see your names out there, you're more experienced with the tool, and you've spent a lot of time with this screen. I know many of you are seeing this screen for the first time. So I'm going to show you some of the basics here in Fuse. This is by no means a comprehensive walkthrough, but it's some ways to get good information very quickly out of the software. Here's my portfolio on the upper left-hand side of the screen. And as I said, I named them Project 1, 2, and 3. And then on the right-hand side, I have 9 critical metrics, which culminate in this score as item number 10. Now, what are these metrics? What do they mean? These 9 metrics of the hundreds that we have, these 9 in particular comprise what we call the Fuse Schedule Index. And these are the 9 top indicators of schedule quality and ultimately schedule success. I know that if I have a schedule that passes with green and flying colors across these 9 metrics, I know I have a schedule that has had care and diligence applied to it and has a level of quality above many of the other schedules that I work with. It's not a guarantee that that project is going to be successful, but it's a very strong indicator and symptom of a successful project to have these 9 items all meet or exceed the standards that we've set. So let's talk about how this screen works. Up here, missing logic. Every schedule needs logic. I should only, at a maximum, have 2 missing logic items in a schedule. The start milestone is usually missing a predecessor, and the finish milestone is usually missing a successor. When this doesn't say 2, I know I've got some things that I need to fix. So let's click here on missing logic, and it shows me the 11 items in Project 1 that have missing logic. So I can look at negative float in Project 2 by clicking here, and I can look at the number of lags in Project 3 by clicking here. It shows me those items on the bottom of the screen. It shows me on the timeline graphically where those items occur in time. And then down here on the bottom left, the most dominant portion of the screen, it shows me where in time I have these issues. So for example, between the three projects, I have 32 missing logic items. Well, down at the bottom here, it shows me how many total I have in 2010, 2011, 12, and 13. So I get 2 different views of the same information. If I want to be project oriented, I look here. And if I want to look at these by time phasing, I look here. Everything's clickable. What do? I hone in on the red items. I click, and then I see exactly what those items are down here. Additionally, when it comes to items like missing logic, hard constraints, leads and lags, we give you the capability within the software to fix those problems and then export the corrected schedule back to your scheduling tool. Now, this is the basic project by project approach. This is what many of our customers are doing today. Well, the reason why I put this presentation together is organizations who are using this for 1, 2, or maybe 3 projects started to see the benefit of this type of project analysis. It's very quick. I've got hundreds of metrics. I can go to a whole different screen here with my float metrics, run the analyzer, and see exactly the float profile of these 3 projects far quicker than I'd be able to do this and get this information through any other methods. So our users have been using it this way. They've seen the benefits, and the questions has repeatedly come up over the past year. How can I take this thinking? How can I take this methodology and make it bigger? And not only distribute the tool to some of my other program managers, but how can we start approaching this methodology at the enterprise level? Well, when I was asked that the first few times, I had to think about that. I was an end user of the software, looking at projects one at a time. In fact, I never personally even had 3 projects open. I usually just had 1 project open. I would analyze it. I would close the file, open a new Fuse workbook, and start analyzing another project. And that's a great methodology, and it's going to give you a tremendous amount of information about your project. What if you want to know how your enterprise quality is? Or, to use the example that I've been using, my location. How do I know how my different locations are scoring? Let's look at these project scores. 26%, 30%, 24%. These look like my grades in high school. You know, these aren't very good. What we like to see from these scores, project by project, is 75% or higher. And we're not seeing it here. So we have some root cause analysis to do. Now, at a basic level, I can look at each of these projects and I can see which one has the most problems. I've got a lot of negative float out here on project 3. But what if I want to see if there's any common threads through my portfolio that are causing these projects to have low quality and low performance? So earlier we talked about fields, and again, that location field. So let me select that location field. I have 4 locations across my portfolio: domestic, Gulf, Northern region, and offshore. If any activities in my portfolio of projects didn't have a value in location, I would see a null item down here as well, letting me know that we had not populated location on all of our tasks. Fortunately, we have. So now, okay, we don't have 3 rows anymore. We have 4. The reason why we have 4 is we have 4 locations. Now, where did my projects go? My projects are in here. They're built in. So when I look at domestic and click on missing logic, these are all of the items that are tagged with domestic across my portfolio that have missing logic. In fact, if I want to see each item and each project they're associated with, that information's right here. I can sort by project, and I can work project by project with my program execution teams to correct the missing logic. In fact, I can do it right here in the Deltek Acumen software and export back to my scheduling tool, as I mentioned. And if we really want to go to the highest degree here, we can look at my schedule quality score by location. And I can see right away the Gulf region scheduled tasks have an overall level of quality of 0. In fact, they've lagged each and every one of their activities across the portfolio. I have a tolerance. Different organizations look at lag differently. I have a tolerance for a certain amount of lag. If I see an entire location has every one of their activities lagged, it's a suspicion that they might not be scheduling with the same rigor and discipline as some of the other locations as well. So this helps me start my schedule quality root cause analysis. Now, further, I can double click on Gulf, isolate those tasks specifically, and then select another field. I have a control account manager field, which has the responsible manager for each of those Gulf tasks. It turns out Jim Smith is the only individual across our portfolio who manages Gulf tasks. So he's the one who's responsible for the 33 lags, the 12 items of negative float. It's time for me to set up a meeting with Jim Smith and work through the schedule so we can correct some of these quality issues, bring his score up, which is going to bring our overall portfolio score up. So let's go back to the main screen here. So we know action item number 1, meeting with Jim Smith to discuss lags, negative float, and other scheduled quality items. As his score is improved, our portfolio score is improved. There's a seldom used feature in Fuse. In fact, I didn't even know about this feature until about 3 months ago. What we did a minute ago is we drilled down. We got into progressively lower levels of detail. We went to location, and then we went to responsible manager. Let's go the other way. And let's say with 3 projects, it's pretty simple. Well, what if I had 100 projects out here, and I really just wanted to see the bottom line when it comes to portfolio quality? Hiding in plain sight on the bottom of this projects button is what's called single ribbon mode. So let me click that. Click Fuse. This is showing me the aggregate schedule quality information, including the score for my entire portfolio. This is my way of understanding what impact I've had to my portfolio quality as I've fixed individual projects and the work of individual contributors like Jim Smith. It's important that I make sure that the things that I'm doing to improve quality at the lowest level are actually helping me improve my quality at the portfolio level. Otherwise, there's a chance that I'm wasting my time. So as I work with this and as we drill down and roll up, we want to make sure that we're seeing improvement here. If we're not, it means we're making quality improvements that are actually at the expense of other areas in the schedule. If we're removing certain types of logic and replacing it with other areas, well, what happens to the tasks that we've removed the logic from? They potentially run the risk of having increased missing logic. So I can't rob Peter to pay Paul. So although most of the time I'm going to drill down and not be in single ribbon mode is my reminder that that's what quality is all about. It's rolling it up and making sure that I'm running a quality operation, that I'm running a quality enterprise, not just fixing individual components here and there. I need to see that there's a relationship between the both, and rolling down and then rolling up as we did helps me see that. Let's go back over to PowerPoint here. This is the same thing. This is where I sliced and grouped by location. I gave special attention to the diagnostic screen, and we're going to be going to some other screens here as well. That diagnostic screen with the red, yellow, green traffic light approach, click the red, see the results and the problems that need to be fixed. For me, that's been one of the single most useful screens and aspects of the entire suite. It helps me identify and solve problems in minutes instead of days, or potentially never if I don't have that information visible to me. We talk a lot about visibility and control. I can only control that which is visible, and that diagnostic screen gives me a level of visibility that, frankly, a few years ago, I never thought I would have. Let's talk about some of the other items. We have the ability to drill in and really focus on logic. Logic is the core of a schedule. Our benchmarking utility will show us how our project or how our portfolio stacks up against other successful and unsuccessful projects that have already been executed. And then thirdly, the risk piece, where we can not only do a risk analysis on individual projects, but we can do a risk analysis on your portfolio as a whole. So I want to see if I can get through these 3 items here. So let's jump over to the Acumen software, Deltek Acumen software again. I have my 3 projects. So let's go to the next tab. Let's go to Logic. I'm going to start with one project, and I can look at all these different logic indicators that we have represented here. Here's a good one, open ends or missing logic. On project 1, I have 11 missing logic items. That's good. What if I want to know kind of my aggregate, or know my aggregate use of lags and leads, or let's say finish-to-finish relationship types? I've used 3. In my company, Company X, we don't think that finish-to-finish relationships are a good practice. For an individual project, I can look here and see that there's 3. Or what I can do is click on the workbook level, and I can see all the finish-to-finish relationships that have been used across my portfolio. And I can either group by project or any one of these other fields as well to understand where they're coming from. If I group by project, I can look at a high level and see 3, 6, and 6 items, and then I can drill in, understand where these relationship types are being used, see if they're candidates to convert from finish to start, or another logic type, and then I can go ahead and make the change. As I make the changes, I can come back here, see what's happening, and I can go back over to the project scoring and see if my quality improvements are making a real impact to my overall quality of my schedule. So that's true of any of these checks here. I can either check them at the individual level, or I can roll up and see the master list at the workbook level. If the master list has hundreds of items, recommendation always is to group these by one of the categories that we have across the top of the screen. Easily accomplished with a click and drag. And now I've grouped by successor. Let's talk benchmarking. A lot of our users, I'll start with an individual project here. A lot of our users really enjoy this capability. And the reason is, this gives you a sanity check on your particular level of quality. It compares you to our growing database of completed projects, and it creates a correlation or association between schedule quality score and whether or not those projects that have had your same or lower score in the past have been successful. My score on project 1 is 26. That's the 12th percentile of projects in our database. Those projects have only been successful 12% of the time. Your project may or may not be successful. We don't know. We don't have the crystal ball yet. Other projects that looked like yours were only successful 12% of the time. So what I can do, and what many of our users are doing today, is going project by project and doing this evaluation. This one does a little better. It's 17%. Still not very good. The senior executive might say, this is good information. How do I look at the total level? How do I look as an enterprise compared to these industries, which I can select from here, and this database of projects? It's quite simple to do this, actually. You click here at the workbook level, and whether you have 3 projects like I do, or whether you have 100 projects down here, it rolls up your quality scores by project and gives you an overall portfolio score, in this case 27, with a probability of success of 13%. Now, if I had to present the information for this portfolio to executive management, I would ask for volunteers. I would not want to bring this information to the table. But if this is the true real state of my project schedules, I know I've got my work cut out for me, because our scores and our level of quality is not typical of success in our industry. we have a number of different ways to bring multi-projects into our tool. When I say multi-projects, I mean projects that have more than one sub-project embedded within them. I'm going to kind of close the deck here because I'm going to do a little different way to open my project. I can open all projects from a single export file as a single project, and I'm going to show you in our risk tool why I'm doing this. I think I have one here called snapshots. I do. I'm going to import. This is a portfolio embedded in a single project file, and I'm going to show you why I did it this way. The way our risk tool works is it's primarily intended to do a risk-based and uncertainty-based Monte Carlo simulation based on project-by-project thinking. Now, when I import a multi-project into the Deltek Acumen risk software, I still see my individual projects listed singly, but because I brought them in all at once, the logic is maintained between them, and I can do risk adjustments and risk drivers on my entire portfolio and see the impact as it ripples through my different projects. So this is amazing, one-of-a-kind functionality, and I mean that because traditionally risk tools work project by project, often not even with the detailed project schedule. Here I have 3 detailed project schedules which may or may not be interrelated. If they're interrelated, I'll have the links between them. If they're not interrelated, that's fine too. I can still do this entire exercise. I'm going to have our risk tool look at the overall schedule quality and give us a quality determination for these projects. At the high level, these 2 projects being in the light red, they don't look very good from a risk perspective because they're low quality. This 3rd schedule is actually worse than the others as well. Things aren't looking very good here. If I roll down, I can see individual areas of greatness, of high quality, and many more areas where there's low quality. Now, most of our users are doing this project by project today. What I've started encouraging users to do is to do what I've done here, to bring in the entire portfolio as a single file. Use our risk advisor as a starting point to calibrate the risk and uncertainty for the schedule based on schedule quality. And by schedule quality, I mean that low 26 or 27% score that we saw. And I'm going to run my simulation, which is simulated program outcomes based on the position, the red position of these sliders. I'm going to create a risk-adjusted. I'm going to create a risk-adjusted schedule. Let me actually run the simulation rather than just save it here. I have an overall portfolio performance view. In fact, it's miserable. It's telling me I can't complete my portfolio on time. It's giving me some better dates here, some more likely dates. Or what I can do is I can go to any one of my individual projects and see that portfolio as well. This one actually has a 2% chance of completing on time. That's still not very good. And in fact, our overall portfolio as a whole doesn't have a chance of meeting its entire end date. So the advantage of going to the portfolio model and risk is I can risk adjust my entire portfolio. I can map risks, a single risk that affects multiple projects in my portfolio. I can do that at once without a lot of saving and closing and reopening the next project. I can do it all en masse here. But at the same time, I can still drill down into my individual projects and even my individual activities and see the risk profile for each individual activity. So one of the things I mentioned earlier is by taking the portfolio approach, I don't lose anything. It's still as though I'm working project by project, but I gain the ability to do something like this, which is to build a new portfolio based, here it's called scenario now, I can rename this. And these are my new end dates for my projects in my portfolio, risk-adjusted finish dates, cascading all the way down through the individual activities in the portfolio as well. So it's given me two great pieces of information. When can my portfolio more credibly finish overall? And when can each individual component, meaning project and even individual work package, finish in each of my projects? So I've just gained this whole sixth sense when it comes to risk by looking at the portfolio as a whole rather than individual projects. I'm going to jump to the conclusion. I don't quite have time to show you portfolio cost risk to the extent that I'd want to. Now, we have other resources exactly on this topic, and I'll direct you to exactly where those are. Let's talk conclusion here, kind of tie it together. I've said this 3 or 4 times now. The same principles that apply to individual programs in the suite can be scaled up to your portfolio. Number 2, and I can't emphasize this enough, and I'll show you exactly where to find that article that we've written, take advantage of custom fields across portfolios to measure quality in its entirety. That was that location field followed by that manager field that I used. If I didn't have a consistently coded location field across my portfolio, I would not be able to do that level of portfolio analysis. Experience what I call the classic Fuse capabilities. When I say that, that's that diagnostic screen with the red, yellow, green all over it. Do that for individual projects, but don't hesitate to load your portfolio into Fuse. And it can be a little daunting, it might be a little scary, but get that portfolio score so that as you improve your score on your individual projects, you see tangibly how it's benefiting the portfolio as a whole. And then finally, enterprise level cost and schedule risk analysis, as I showed you. It's not only supported, it's as easy as doing it on a single project, but you're going one level up and you're saying my projects are subordinate to that portfolio, but I can still do all my risk loading and risk management down at the individual project level while keeping an eye on what that risk adjustment is doing to my portfolio as a whole. To sum it up, you don't lose any fidelity by doing portfolios, you only gain. Now, Jen, I'm sure questions have been pouring in during the webinar here. Are there any in particular that are kind of common threads or things that people want me to go back and talk more about? You know, let me know.
Hi, Tom. Yeah, first one I can answer. We will be sending out the presentation slides and a recording of the presentation, hopefully by the end of today. So everyone on the webinar will receive that today or tomorrow. Now, for some of the questions during the presentation, the first one was, can you import an Excel-based risk register, or do you have to recreate it in Acumen Risk?
Okay, that's a great question, and let me go back over to the software here. Let me go to risk, which I happen to be in already, and let me, in fact, open the risk register panel. Let me actually do it this way. And so first part of the question, or actually second part of the question first, is I can start here in risk and work on my risk register. Now I have this nice import capability where I can point to an Excel file. Actually, I can create one from here, or I can point to one. In fact, let me open one up in Excel, one that's been exported from the tool. It's called Populated Risk Register. It actually ships with the tool. And here it is in Excel. And really, since this was an export, you don't have to come up with your own score. The system will come up with a score and some of this other information for your risks. But if you're able to, in Excel, bring this level of information over from an existing system or an existing risk register, you'll be ready to go. You'll be able to import this and use this in Deltek Acumen Risk. instead of having to do a lot of or any rekeying or copy and paste or anything like that.
Great. We have 2 questions, or 3 questions actually, with Acumen or Acumen Fuse. The first one is, can you get a health check by assignment, for example, by department?
Yes. Let's see. Let me open a single project. No, I can do it here with the snapshots. There's no reason for me to open a single project. Let me just delete that risk-adjusted schedule that we created. I can do a health check. So here I'm at the project level. I can very quickly go down to the resource level. This is a function of how you've defined your resources. So these might be different departments. They might be different individuals. And out here, here's all my health metrics. And then here's the score as well. Now, if you have something like a department field coded in here, I used location in my example. I don't think I have one called department, but I've got location, I've got that. Let me go to my responsible managers here. These are the 3 responsible managers. Oh, and I mentioned earlier, if they're blank, I'll see null. And as it turns out, I've got some coding to do because I do have a series of items. I can click here. I have 109 items that don't have a control account manager assigned. So not only can I do the scoring and schedule quality analysis by each of them, but I can also see, wait a minute, I need an owner for these. So long story short, yes, either by resource, WBS level, or any of the custom fields that I have in my schedule.
Okay. The next one is, what is the difference between fields and codes?
Let's talk about that. This is largely defined in your scheduling tool. And I kind of throw the terms around interchangeably. Generally speaking, a code field is a field that has a predefined set of values, kind of a table. You might have 5 codes in your code dictionary, and then each of those 5, well, let me back up. A code field might have 5 choices. So location in your scheduling tool might have a pull-down menu and locks you into picking from 4 locations. Generally speaking, a user-defined field, this can differ depending on scheduling tools, so I'm speaking generally here. Generally, a user-defined field like user text 4 here is something that you can just start typing in, and it doesn't need to be selected from a prescribed list of values.
Okay. And the next one is, are the metrics in the ribbon analyzer set, or can other metrics be added?
Yes, actually, the answer is twofold. We maybe even threefold. We set you up for success. We set you up with a very high quality set of quality metrics. Now, if your organization decides that lags are not only acceptable, but they're encouraged, you can remove that. And in fact, when I score, you can see that the scores have actually changed. Because I've removed lags from my ribbon analyzer, they're no longer part of my schedule score. Now, if I decide that lags are good and I don't mind lags, but if I have some other metrics that I want to add, I like this one, kind of near critical tasks, tasks that have 0 to 20 days of float. I can add that metric to my screen, and I can see I'm actually doing pretty well here on near critical tasks. And finally, the second wrinkle to this, which I won't go into too much detail on, is we give you the full ability to modify the metrics that we've created for you and even create your own metrics from scratch. If you have metrics that are dependent on your custom or user-defined fields, or frankly, if you have things that you uniquely measure that you feel are important that we don't have here in the tool, you can create them and truly have a custom set of your own metrics that you're using to evaluate the quality of your schedule. In fact, one final thing, you can even control exactly what constitutes red, yellow, and green, the exact threshold for red, yellow, green, and the explanation that the user will see when they hit any one of these conditions.
Okay, I'm going to move into some questions on Acumen risk. We have one question is, we have LOEs in our schedule. Do you need to filter these out for your risk analysis?
No, the LOEs shouldn't be driving your overall risk performance. If you do have risks that impact an LOE, you can certainly map risks to a level of effort task, but they're not going to be risk drivers on their own.
And then a similar question, can you assign risk to summary activities, or do you have to do it on the individual activities?
Terrific question. Terrific question. Let me open the risk register, and I'll say yes, but I'll even import that populated risk register that we looked at in Excel earlier. And rather than just say yes, I'll show you exactly what I mean. Here's my 1 month update schedule. And what I could do, I can go to my lowest level task called handover, and I can map risk 42, and it creates a relationship between the two. Now let me talk early design here. Early design, I can map risk 9. I mapped it at the summary level, and it cascaded the risk down to the individual levels. In fact, I can take this to the highest extent. I can map a risk, perhaps one of these weather risks, if the entire project is taking place in a weather-affected region. I can map the weather risk to the entire project. And now with our portfolio level of thinking, I can actually map a risk to an entire portfolio. Let me give you a real example. If you're working in an environment, say you have a number of customer service work centers that are all involved in your portfolio of projects, because the customer service is supporting all of your projects, and those workers at the work centers are governed by, I don't know, the Communication Workers of America labor union. And if there's a labor negotiation coming up and there's the expectation that there's going to be a labor strike, it could impact all projects in your portfolio at the same time. So what you could do is define a risk that says risk of strike with the Communication Workers of America. Map, you would select the portfolio level here, you would select the risk here, and it will actually cascade that risk down through your entire portfolio.
Great, and I think we have time for just one or two more. One question is Acumen Risk a diagnostics tool as well, like Fuse?
Yes and no. The diagnostics, they don't have duplicate functionality, but they work hand in glove. And what I mean by that is I can take the quality scores, and as I did when I used this risk advisor, and I'll go back over here to risk, and I'll run the risk advisor. It will inherit those quality scores and use them for my risk evaluation. So I need Fuse to understand where the diagnostic problems are. Then risk, as I said, will take the handoff of information and use that. I can apply those to the portfolio. So now I've leveraged the quality scoring that Fuse provides in my risk model. Now if I run my Monte Carlo simulation, risk is doing another form of diagnostic. It's not diagnosing my schedule quality, although it's used that as an input. It's diagnosing my probability of success for my project. And frankly, with the low quality, it's going to come back and give me a low probability of actually being able to complete the project on time, or a low diagnosis of execution success. So two different forms of diagnosis to wrap that one up.
Okay, great. Well, I think that is all the time we have today. Thanks so much for your presentation, Tom and Justin.